Welcome to the PAS Report Podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the PAS Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me today. Make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Also, visit the PAS Report website, pasreport.com, and follow me on social media at PAS Report. So today, obviously, we have to talk about the second assassination attempt on the former president of the United States, President Trump. And I want to break down everything we know about the latest attempt. Trust me. We are witnessing major failures within our bureaucracy, and it's absolutely stunning. How does something like this happen again? And we have to ask the question, what went wrong? Who's responsible? Just because an assassination attempt wasn't successful and the target wasn't eliminated doesn't mean that our agencies, our bureaucracy succeeded. Ryan Routh should never have gotten as close as he did. And so we have to dive into the question of what's going on in the bureaucracy. And there's other questions too, and questions that should disturb every American regardless of where you stand politically. And I'm going to get into the shooting. But here's what's even more alarming. Instead of outrage, we're seeing the media and Democrats downplaying the assassination attempt. In fact, some are even hinting that Trump himself is to blame for the attempts on his life. Yes, that's what they're saying. They're trying to spin the assassination attempt as his fault. And this level of blame shifting, it's not just irresponsible, it's dangerous. It sends a message that this is acceptable. They're trying to normalize it, and it opens the door for even more violence. Now, today, I'm going to go through what we know, what we don't know. I'll talk about several questions that have to be raised and how every American is being put at risk. So let's jump right in. We know that Ryan Routh was at this location from 1:59 a.m. to 1:31 p.m. They pinged the cellular data. They got it from the towers. And we also know that this location and golf outing was not on the former president's schedule. In fact, most of the former president's staff wasn't even aware that the president was going to be doing a golf outing. So it certainly raises the question, how did Ryan Routh know he would be there? Was he just taking a chance and got lucky, or is there something more nefarious at play? And how did he know that this was the weakest point of security at the golf course? Why wasn't an outside perimeter established by Secret Service, particularly in this area? I've conducted enough risk assessments in my life to know that this area was known to be a vulnerability. It was obvious. Now, getting back to the assassination attempt, according to reports, a Secret Service agent saw the barrel of the gun poking through some brush and a fence. And the agent opened fire, which alerted other agents, and the wannabe assassin fled the area. So he didn't get to fire off a shot. We know that the weapon the potential assassin had was an AK-47. Now, I'm still unaware if it was a fully automatic AK, which raises even more questions because it's extremely difficult to own a fully automatic firearm. Also, he would have never been able to get licensed or pass a background investigation because of his past criminal record, including a 2002 firearm charge where he had an automatic weapon, was charged with weapons of mass destruction. So how did he get that firearm? The serial numbers were filed off of it. And again, while he didn't get as close as the first shooter, Thomas Crooks, 2 months ago, Routh was still dangerously close to the president, about 300 to 500 yards, according to reports. As an individual, we know he was a staunch Democrat, donated to all Democrat candidates. That's public information. He had severe Trump derangement syndrome, and apparently he self-published a book where one of the passages reads, quote, "You are free to assassinate Trump as well as me for the error in judgment and the dismantling of the deal." Now, he was referring to Iran in that passage, which I'm going to get into that later. This is a guy that spent months in Ukraine, tried to recruit others to fight on behalf of Ukraine. The guy continually made lunatic ravings regarding Trump and the need to fight Russia at any and all costs. But the question we have to ask, what is going on? When we look at these assassins, are they just fringe lunatics that became radicalized by the constant Hitler references? the constant claim that Trump's a threat to democracy, and how if he wins, it's going to be the last election ever. Do they view themselves as heroes that were trying to take out the next Hitler? Are they operating on their own? Or is something bigger going on? Because from the information we have and the information that we actually don't have, something isn't right here. It's given me a very uneasy feeling. And I hate to say it, but I don't think that this is the last attempt we're going to see. You look at these two individuals, and how were they so capable to get off these shots? Remember, Thomas Crooks, it's not that he had bad aim. His shot was actually on point. It was that Trump turned the last second where it nicked his ear. So it was off by millimeters. Now, this guy didn't even get to fire off a shot, thankfully. The former president wasn't harmed in any way. But are we really to believe that these two losers are this capable that they could get so close to the president, the former president, almost take him out? So something doesn't smell right here. And I want to discuss that when we get back from this quick break. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So we're examining the second assassination attempt on the former president. And according to reports, Ryan Routh was in the Ukraine. He was flagged by our intelligence agencies, warned the State Department about him. And another report said that he was in chat rooms trying to recruit mercenaries to fight in Ukraine. People reported him to the FBI. So we know for a fact this guy was on the Fed's radar. And what interactions did he have with the Feds? We don't know that yet. That information hasn't been released, but it would be interesting to know if he was being monitored at all at any time. And where did he get the money to travel to Ukraine, D.C., Hawaii, and other places? I mean, supposedly the guy was a deadbeat. He didn't have a lot of money. Yet he found ways to travel all around the world. He found ways to donate to Democrat candidates. And it's not like he donated large amounts of money, large sums of money that would really raise any red flags. But again, he didn't really have a steady job, and so how was he so resourceful? He made trips to Capitol Hill, met with members of Congress about Ukraine. It really is extraordinary. And unlike Crooks, the good news is that Routh is alive. He had a large presence on social media, so I suspect we're going to be getting a lot more information about him going forward, unlike Thomas Crooks, where we still don't know. But we see this international nexus, and maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's all coincidence. But we see this international nexus with this guy, Routh. But we also saw some type of international nexus with Thomas Crooks, the first would-be assassin. And this is where it gets really bizarre. Because if we look at Thomas Crooks, we still know very little about him. We know virtually nothing about him. We know virtually nothing about the assassination attempt. I spoke to a few former FBI people, including George Hill, who's been on this program before, who said we're probably never going to find out about him. But I find it bizarre that Thomas Crooks had absolutely no social media presence. He wasn't big on the internet, yet, according to reports, he had 3 foreign email accounts. Now, again, this is coming from the FBI, so take it as you see it. According to FBI agents, they told the former president that they were able to access the 3 foreign email accounts that was used by Crooks, but they have found no indications that anyone else was involved in the attack. Well, what was in those foreign email accounts? I mean, that just seems to be pretty weird that you would have foreign email accounts. I mean, most people, normal people, ordinary people, just simply get a Yahoo account or Gmail account. Why would he get foreign email accounts? He had explosives that he made. So something's going on. I mean, we're talking about they may have been fringe lunatics. However, it seems that they were pretty capable individuals. I mean, if you look at their movements, if you look at what they were able to do, they were capable. So what's really going on here? And I think as Americans, we have to hold our officials accountable, hold their feet to the fire to get information. Is something bigger going on? Is this a matter of just people being radicalized by the Democrats' rhetoric? Routh routinely talked about democracy being on the ballot this election cycle. It really is difficult to make heads or tails of what's taking place. And we have to throw into the mix how a Pakistani national was picked up by the feds about 3 weeks ago trying to recruit people to assassinate the former president on behalf of the Iranian government, who has a contract out on the former president of the United States, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the former CIA director, and others. And given the praise that Routh heaped on the Iranian government in his self-published book that nobody probably ever read. We really need to know, did he have any contact with the Iranian government or Iranian officials or maybe this Pakistani? Because, again, I just find this bizarre. You have two individuals that came really close to taking out a former president. Now, imagine it was someone that actually did have skill. Imagine it was someone that did have specialized training. Imagine it was a member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force. What happens then? And that's the concern I have, that we're seeing the vulnerabilities in real time. And if it's just a case of two derelicts, two morons, well, sooner or later, someone much more capable is going to try and assassinate the former president, and they may be successful. One of the things I fear is the Iranian drone program. They tried to assassinate the Iraqi prime minister a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, sending 3 explosive-laden drones to the Iraqi prime minister's home. 2 of them were shot down before they hit the home, but one was able to successfully detonate by the home. Now, the Iraqi prime minister wasn't injured in the attack, thankfully. He was all right. But if we're looking at this, I mean, come on now. All it takes is one time to be successful. And where does that leave us? And my concern is the lack of information that's being relayed to the public. This lack of information is absolute insanity. The public has a right to know what the hell is going on. How many more attempts are there out there? How many more people are there? Are the FBI, are they watching this? Are they paying attention to anyone that may potentially try and assassinate the former president, the current president, the Democrat presidential candidate? We want our politicians to be safe. We want our officials to be safe. We might disagree with them politically, but we don't want to see people getting assassinated. And if an attack on Trump were to be successful, all hell is going to break loose. And the Democrats aren't stupid. The media is not stupid. They know this. They know that. Now, is it what they want? I don't think so. I don't believe so. At least I hope not. But they're not helping the situation. They're not trying to calm down the tension. They keep going on. And I'm going to get into that in the last segment. But let's just take a look at it. Let's say a lone gunman ends up assassinating the former president. What do you think is going to happen out there? That may be the spark that blows up the entire powder keg that we currently have in the United States. It will be explosive. And people will be like, well, it's the Trump supporters. They're crazy. It's the Trump supporters. They're domestic terrorists. They're right-wing extremists. Meanwhile, here's a guy in former President Trump that had 4 criminal cases brought against him, 2 impeachment trials, 2 civil suits where they tried to bankrupt him, constant leaks and smears about him, from the Russian collusion hoax to the Russian bounties to the Very Fine People hoax, the bloodbath hoax that Kamala Harris repeated on the debate stage last week. And so what do you think Trump supporters are going to think if there's a successful attempt? They're going to be angry. It's not hard to see. You know, I warned about the rhetoric following January 6th in that episode, so you should check that out. I warned how they're essentially crafting the next Timothy McVeigh. I wrote about it. I wrote an article on the Federalist about it. And so if you do have a lone gunman that takes out Trump, well, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to think that the bureaucracy was behind it, that the government had something to do with it. That's going to be a catastrophic disaster for our country. And knowing this, if an attack were to be successful, what are the odds that they do try and pin it on a foreign country? Don't forget, there's a lot of hawks that do want to go to war with Iran, both Democrat and Republicans. And so what if Iran's the perfect scapegoat? Because if an attack is successful and they admit that it was a lone gunman that was radicalized by the Democrat rhetoric, well, that creates a lot of division, even more division within our country. And you may see some efforts of retaliation, which is going to be disastrous for us. So I wouldn't put it past them to concoct a story that Iran played a role. And maybe Iran did, maybe they didn't. But that creates another problem, because if a foreign government assassinates a former president of the United States, that is an act of war. It's an immediate declaration of war. And where is that going to lead? There's no win in this situation. Oh, that's just tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. That would never happen. There's a lot of things that I said would never happen over the course of the last 20 years. And yet they did. And watching the way our politicians behave, watching the way our bureaucratic officials behave, I don't put anything past them anymore. Many of them are just a bunch of slime balls. They think they know what's in the best interest of the United States. They think they know what's in your best interest, your family's best interest. They think they're smarter than everyone else. More importantly, they think they have control over situations, that they can control it. And they don't realize that they've lost control several years ago. That's what makes them so dangerous, because they'll push the boundaries and then something is going to happen. I know this is a heavy topic, but it's one that has to be addressed head on because the implications are staggering, not just for Trump, not just for his supporters, but it's staggering and puts every single American at risk, regardless of political affiliation. The assassination of a former president, especially someone like Donald Trump, would throw this country into chaos. We're already deeply divided, but an event like this magnifies that division to a level that we've never seen before. You have the crazies that would seize the moment. They'd escalate tensions even further. And it's not just the immediate aftermath that we should worry about. If the former president is assassinated, think about the precedent it sets that if a political assassination happens here in the United States in 2024, and then you have Democrats downplaying, some even justifying it, putting the blame on him, then what's next? What's next? How many disillusioned, angry, fanatical people do we have in this country? How many mentally unbalanced people are there? And they're going to see it as a viable way to achieve their political goals, a tit for tat. This threatens our republic. And the scary part is, it's not just about Trump. Once the line is crossed, there's no turning back. If a successful assassination attempt were to occur, it's going to open the door to more violence, more extremism, and a future where it becomes the norm. That's the reality. And I don't think anyone wants to go down that road because Pandora's box is opening. And once it's fully opened, there's no going back. So we have to confront it now, ask the tough questions now to try and prevent something from even worse happening. And unfortunately, you have a bunch of officials, along with the media enablers, the extension of the Democrat Party, that seem to be justifying and enabling this. And that's a concern. And we'll talk about that when we get back from this quick break. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So you would think that nobody actually wants to see this happen again. And so we'd have a responsible press that would actually report on what's going on. They would ask the tough questions. However, they have decided that the assassination attempt on the former president is his fault. It's the fault of his supporters, and they're going to look to exploit the situation. You had a Cincinnati Enquirer headline that read, Trump brings these assassination attempts on himself. A Washington Post headline, another chance for Trump to frame Democrats as dangerous has emerged. USA Today downplays the incident. Trump safe after shots fired in his vicinity in Florida. Time, the suspect arrested in relation to the shooting at Trump's golf course in Florida on Sunday has been identified as Ryan Routh, a 58-year-old with unclear political ideology. Politico reports Republicans outraged over possible assassination attempt. They are going to keep trying to kill Trump. NBC News headline, man in custody after golf club incident. I mean, really? These are the headlines that are coming out? And then you listen to the pundits and the far-left networks and take a listen for yourself, and you come to your own conclusion.
Today's apparent assassination attempt comes amid increasingly fierce rhetoric on the campaign trail itself. Mr. Trump, his running mate J.D. Vance continue to make baseless claims about Haitian immigrants in Ohio.
The Trump campaign is seizing on this apparent assassination attempt as a way to rile up his base.
Did the left forget Trump almost got killed?
This really seems to be the confluence of two very bad things going on in the Republican Party. On one side, the attempts to divide, to enrage the population, to put out false rumors and misinformation. And then on the other side, we have this complete availability of assault rifles to, it seems, almost anyone who wants to have access.
So it's clear the assassination attempt is not due to some of these crazy radicals that exist within our society. It's not due to the Democratic rhetoric about him being the next Hitler. It's due to Trump himself. It's due to Trump and his rhetoric, and he deserves the assassination attempts against him. That's what they're trying to say. Now, if we listen to the Democrat rhetoric, and I'm only taking a small sample, understand that in this sound clip. It's a small sample of what Democrats have said over the last 2 years. Take a listen.
Right now, I feel like MAGA in general, they are threats to us domestically. And we see it time and time again. Domestic terrorism is a real thing, and he is the guy that stokes it.
Let's not pretend that Donald Trump isn't exactly like Mussolini, exactly like Hitler. He is that guy.
Donald Trump cannot be president again. He's an existential threat to democracy.
He is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
This MAGA threat is a threat to the brick and mortar of our democratic institutions.
The former president is a threat to our most fundamental freedoms. He has openly said he will be a dictator on day one.
And remember, that's only a small sample over the course of the last 2 years. I could have literally have just played sound clips this entire episode of that type of inflammatory rhetoric, but according to the media and according to Democrats, they bear no responsibility in the current environment in which we exist. And where the hell is the President of the United States? Where is Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas? Where are they? Why isn't the president showing as much fervor as he did when people weren't getting the COVID vaccine? When he came out there and blasted the American public and said his patience and his administration's patience is wearing thin.
Our patience is wearing thin.
Where's the president that gave a 1 hour rambling speech with the blood red backdrop flanked by the Marines, talking passionately about how MAGA extremists, Trump supporters, are the biggest threat to this country since our founding? They're the biggest threat to the republic, that they're domestic enemies, domestic terrorists. Where is the President of the United States expressing that passion against those that have tried to assassinate the former president? Where is that passion? We don't see it. And that's the concerning part. You know, sadly, we live in a country where if something happens to a former president, you're going to have maybe half the country actually celebrate it. That's how disgusting it's become. You had Alexander Vindman's wife on X put out a post, "His ear is safe. We could go back to our Sundays." These people would cheer it on. They would celebrate it. They may not do so overtly. They may not do so publicly. But it's clear how they feel. And when the president tells us that he wants to be the president of all Americans, well, maybe he should show that leadership. Maybe that will calm down the situation. And not for nothing, Secretary Mayorkas should be fired. Well, he should have been fired years ago, but he should be fired today immediately. He should be fired. This is on his watch. He destroyed our borders, and now we have 2 attempts on a presidential candidate's life. That's on him. If he can't manage that agency, well, then he doesn't deserve to lead it, and he should be yanked immediately. I have never seen a more thoroughly incompetent administration in my life. This should be unacceptable to every single American, regardless of political ideology. Every single American. If this were happening, if there were 2 attempts on Kamala Harris's life or Joe Biden's life, I would be speaking out forcefully and as passionately as I am today, because I know what it leads to. There are so many questions surrounding the assassination attempts. We need real leadership right now. This country is devoid of that leadership. And we will not have stability until leadership is brought back, until officials are held accountable for their actions and their failures. We have to demand the answers to the tough questions that I know it's hard to ask, but we have to ask them. And we have to get to the bottom of what's going on. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, please share it with your family and friends and on social media. Make sure that you subscribe to the PAS Report podcast. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back next week with another great episode of the PAS Report.
Thank you for listening to the PAS Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at pasreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at PAS Report.